In 1974, 5 nuns from a small stone chapel in rural Texas vanished without a trace. 40 years later, a retired priest receives a trembling knock at his rectory door and finds one of them, alive, carrying a blood-stained rosary. The wind howled through the empty plains, rattling the chapel's wooden cross. Candles flickered in the dim sanctuary as the 5 sisters of St. Isidore prepared for evening prayer. But when the bells stopped ringing that night, no one ever saw them again. For decades, the villagers whispered of strange lights, of hymns echoing from beneath the chapel, and of a vow that was never meant to be broken. The church sealed the records. Families moved away. Only the wind remembered their names. Why did God's servants vanish from his own house? And why did the church bury the truth so deep beneath sacred ground? For 40 years, believers wondered if divine justice had turned into divine silence. But in 2014, a single survivor returned, aged, trembling, and haunted by something she refused to name. By the end of this story, you'll understand what was hidden beneath St. Isidore's chapel and the price of a miracle that should never have happened. Welcome to Bible Stories and Mysteries. Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. The plains of West Texas breathe in silence before a storm. A pale sun sinks behind the horizon, turning the tall grass into copper waves that sway around a lonely stone chapel. The building stands like a wound on sacred ground, its small bell tower rising against the dusk, its wooden door trembling under the wind. Inside, the candles flicker in thin glass jars, and 5 shadows kneel before the altar. Sister Amara leads them in prayer. She is young, 28, her voice steady as she reads from Psalm 23. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." The words echo strangely. The air inside the chapel feels heavier than before, humid, as though the walls themselves are exhaling. Sister Ruth crosses herself twice, whispering that she hears water dripping somewhere beneath the floor. Sister Miriam hushes her. "It's the wind," she says. "It always sounds like water in these walls." Outside, thunder crawls across the plains. The cattle in the distance scatter toward the tree line. Lightning reveals the cross atop the chapel, bent slightly to the east as if bowing. The sisters continue their evening litany. The clock on the wall reads 7:46 p.m. That will be the last time it ever moves. When the first bell rings, none of them pull the rope. The bell rope had been cut short years earlier, after the diocese deemed it unsafe. Yet now, a single chime breaks through the storm. Then another, and another, 13 in all, slow, uneven, trembling. Sister Amara rises, her heart pounding. "Who's in the tower?" she calls. No answer. Sister Catherine, the youngest, steps to the window. Lightning flashes, revealing only the outline of the bell tower. The rope dangles still, untouched, but a figure seems to move inside, just for an instant, white and luminous against the shadows. The storm grows wilder. The chapel door creaks open, slamming against the wall. A gust of wind blows out the candles, and for a moment the sisters see their reflections flicker in the glass of the altar cross, 5 faces multiplied into infinity. Then the chanting begins. It is faint, distant, coming from somewhere below the floorboards. A hymn they do not recognize, sung in Latin, but with syllables that twist oddly, as though something ancient is struggling to speak through human tongues. Sister Ruth clutches her rosary until the beads cut into her palm. "Where is that coming from?" "The crypt," whispers Sister Miriam. But there is no crypt beneath St. Isidore's chapel, or so they've always believed. Amara lights a candle again. The flame flickers wildly, though there's no wind now. The chanting stops. Silence fills the room, thick, expectant. Then a low groan rises from beneath the altar. The floorboards tremble. The sisters back away, their shadows stretching along the walls. The candle flame grows tall and narrow, almost blue. A smell of iron seeps into the air. Sister Amara kneels, her instinct not fear but prayer. "Lord, whatever walks here, let it remember you." Something answers. A whisper, almost kind, from below the chapel stones. "I never forgot." The words freeze the room. Then darkness. The candle extinguishes itself. The wind roars through the door once more. And when it subsides, there is nothing left but silence and the faint metallic scent of rain. At dawn, a farmer named Daniel Pierce rides past the chapel on his way to market. He notices the door wide open. Inside, the air is cool and still. 5 veils rest neatly folded upon the altar, black and white against the worn wood. The clock remains stopped at 7:46. The bell hangs motionless in the tower. But when Daniel steps outside again, he swears he hears it ring once, soft, distant, as if underwater. He looks toward the horizon, where fog clings to the fields like smoke. The sun struggles to rise through it, dim and red. When he returns to town, his report to the sheriff is simple but strange. The chapel's empty. The sisters are gone. But the air, it felt like it was praying. The sheriff rides out later that day. He finds no footprints in the dust, no sign of struggle, just the open door, the folded veils, and a faint trail of wax leading behind the altar to a place where the floor sounds hollow when struck. By nightfall, the diocese has been notified. The chapel is sealed, and within days it becomes a forbidden subject. But whispers remain, of light seen drifting over the plains, of voices humming from the earth, of prayers that never stopped. And somewhere, beneath St. Isidore's chapel, something continues to wait. The diocese sends a young seminarian, Gabriel Alvarez, to bless the site. When he kneels to pray, the ground answers with a heartbeat. The diocese sent a young seminarian named Gabriel Alvarez to bless the site. When he knelt to pray, the ground answered with a faint heartbeat beneath the altar. He told himself it was only wind trapped under the stones, yet he felt something breathing through the floor. The air was colder near the altar, thick with the scent of wax and rain. When he rose, the candles flickered as if exhaling with him. Gabriel was 23, devoted, earnest, and eager to serve. But when he looked upon the folded veils left behind, his throat tightened. He remembered seeing Sister Amara once during a pilgrimage to the plains. She had smiled at him kindly, a mentor of calm faith. The thought that she might have vanished into thin air felt like a wound he couldn't name. He completed his blessing swiftly, sprinkling holy water across the pews, whispering the Latin words he had memorized by heart. But when the last drop touched the altar, the bell above him rang once, softly, almost like a sigh. Gabriel froze. No wind, no rope. And yet, the sound continued to echo in his mind long after it stopped. He sealed the chapel that night under the bishop's orders. "It is better this way," the bishop said. "Let the land rest. God will reveal his truth in his own time." Gabriel obeyed, but the chapel never left him. Years passed. He became a priest, then a teacher, then a quiet man who kept his doubts buried under layers of prayer. And still, each November, he would dream of the bell, 13 slow tolls, and of the veils folded like wings waiting for resurrection. 40 years later, the memory came knocking at his door. It was late February 2014. The wind beat softly against the old rectory window. Gabriel sat at his desk, reading the book of Job, when someone knocked 3 times, slow, deliberate. He opened the door to find an old woman standing beneath the porch light. Her veil was grey and tattered, her skin pale as paper. Her eyes, though clouded, carried a depth he recognized at once. "Father," she said, her voice trembling, "it's time to confess." For a heartbeat, he could not speak. He simply stared. The lines on her face were unfamiliar, yet the tone of her voice pulled him backward through decades. "Sister Amara." She nodded, tears welling. "They told you we died, but not all of us did. He helped her inside. The rectory smelled of old books and dust, of wine and candle wax. She sat in the small wooden confessional, hands shaking as she clutched a rosary blackened with age, and something darker, a reddish stain on the cross. He spoke softly. "Tell me what happened." Her breathing grew uneven. "It began with the light, Father. We thought it was the Holy Spirit. It descended through the cracks in the chapel floor. But what came wasn't peace. It was hunger." He frowned. "Hunger? It wanted our prayers. It wanted us to keep praying forever. It said if we stopped, the darkness would rise again." Her words fell like stones. Gabriel felt the hair on his neck lift. "Where have you been all this time?" he whispered. "Below," she said simply, "between the walls, in the silence that never ends." She looked up at him with eyes full of grief. "I shouldn't have returned, but he told me to come, to finish the prayer." Gabriel opened his Bible with trembling hands. The page fell to Isaiah 43:2. "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you." Sister Amara smiled faintly. The water beneath St. Isidore never stopped flowing. That night, after she fell asleep in the guest room, Gabriel dreamed again of the chapel. Only this time, he saw it from beneath, the stones glowing faintly, the sound of 5 voices still chanting through the earth. When he awoke, the smell of rain filled the rectory, though the windows were closed. The old woman's bed was empty. Her rosary lay on the pillow, the beads warm to the touch. He knew where he had to go. Before dawn, he packed his Bible, a flashlight, and a small silver crucifix. He drove through the fog-drenched plains toward the ruins of St. Isidore's chapel, now nothing more than broken stone and thorn. The wind met him there, soft but persistent, as if greeting him by name. He stepped inside. The pews had rotted away. The altar leaned against the wall. But in the corner, near the place where the floor had once sounded hollow, he saw something new. A faint light leaking through the cracks, pulsing in rhythm with his own heart. He whispered, "Lord, if this is your will, let me understand." The ground beneath him trembled, and far below, a woman's voice began to sing. The ruins of St. Isidore greeted Father Gabriel like a memory refusing to die. The air was heavy, the kind that pressed on the chest and quieted every breath. Dust floated through the broken windows, catching the grey light of dawn. He moved slowly, his footsteps echoing where prayers once rose like incense. He paused at the altar, running his fingers along the cracked stone. The marks of water still streaked the walls, as if the chapel itself had cried through the years. He whispered a prayer under his breath, but the words felt swallowed by the silence. Then he noticed it, the light. It seeped faintly through the gaps between the stones beneath the altar, a dull, breathing glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. He knelt and brushed the dust away. The stone felt warmer than it should. He pressed harder, and the slab shifted slightly, revealing a dark seam. He reached for his flashlight, the beam slicing through the gloom. Underneath the altar was a narrow wooden hatch, ancient and nailed shut from above. On its surface, carved faintly by hand, were 5 initials: AM, RS, MT, CV, and HE, the names of the missing nuns. His heart sank. He knew each of them from the old report, from the photographs kept in the diocesan archive, faces lost to time, now immortalized beneath his knees. He whispered, "Forgive me," and pried the hatch open. The smell that rose was neither earth nor decay, but something unfamiliar, almost sweet, like burning myrrh and damp air mixed together. He held the flashlight over the opening. A staircase spiraled downward, carved directly into the ground. The edges were wet, glistening, as if the walls themselves were weeping. Gabriel hesitated. He could turn back now, report what he found, leave the rest to faith, but something deeper than curiosity drew him, something close to calling. He descended. Each step groaned under his weight. Water dripped somewhere below, echoing like distant footsteps. When he reached the bottom, the air changed. It felt ancient, stale but not dead. He lifted his light. A chamber unfolded before him, larger than he expected, circular and perfectly symmetrical. The walls were carved with strange symbols, crosses intertwined with serpents, fish turned backward, halos cracked down the middle. And there at the center of the room stood another altar. But this one was different. It was built of black stone, smooth as glass, and across its surface ran veins of red that shimmered faintly in the light. Upon it rested a reliquary, a small sealed box of iron, its hinges rusted yet intact. Gabriel approached slowly. He could hear something faint inside, a whisper, or perhaps the shifting of air. He touched the box, and the whisper grew louder. It was not a voice in the room, but within him, threading through his thoughts like a breath, not his own. "You came back," it said. He stumbled backward, clutching the crucifix on his chest. "Who's there?" The answer was gentle, almost sorrowful. "The prayer you ended has not ended." Gabriel steadied himself. He had read about such occurrences, echoes, hallucinations, the mind bending under strain. But this was different. It felt aware. He knelt before the reliquary and began to pray aloud, each word of Pater Noster breaking the air like glass. As he spoke, the light around him dimmed. The symbols on the wall began to fade, leaving only one phrase carved clearly in Latin above the altar: "Lux venit non semper a Deo." Light does not always come from God. The chamber trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. The reliquary rattled once, then fell still. From the shadows beyond, he thought he saw movement. Figures standing, faint outlines of veiled women, their faces turned toward him in the dark. "Who are you?" he whispered. One of them stepped forward. Her veil drifted like smoke, her face pale and timeless. "Sister Amara," he said without thinking. The figure nodded slowly. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out was layered, as if several voices spoke through one throat. "You found what we could not bury." Gabriel backed away, the crucifix shaking in his grip. "If this is temptation, I rebuke it in Christ's name." The air rippled and the figures vanished like mist. Only silence remained, except for the reliquary, now glowing faintly red. He reached for it again, compelled by something between dread and faith. The moment his fingers touched the iron, a flash filled the chamber. For an instant he saw everything, the 5 sisters kneeling around this same altar, light pouring through the cracks, their faces lifted not in prayer but in terror. Then darkness swallowed it all. When Gabriel opened his eyes, he was on the floor. The reliquary sat open before him. Inside, there was no relic, only a single folded page, edges burned, ink faded to brown. He lifted it carefully. It was written in Sister Amara's hand. The date at the top read November 12th, 1974, and the first line read, "We sought his presence. Instead, we found his silence." And another voice answering. The light died. The chamber grew cold. Above him, the faint sound of the chapel's bell rang once through 40 years of dust. And in that echo he knew this was not over. Father Gabriel sat on the cold ground, his fingers trembling as he unfolded the ancient page. The ink had bled into the fibers, the words half erased by time and tears, but what remained was enough to still his breath. We opened the floor to seek the river of light. It was not a river, it was a mouth. He turned the paper over. There, scrawled in haste, were 5 signatures, the same initials carved on the wooden hatch above. Beneath them, a single phrase in Latin, Nos oramus sed non soli. We prayed, but not alone. Gabriel's throat tightened. His flashlight flickered, throwing brief shapes on the wall, shadows that didn't belong to him. The air moved with slow rhythm, like something vast, breathing in the dark. He whispered, "In the name of the Father." but his voice failed. From somewhere deeper within the chamber came a faint rustling, the sound of fabric dragging across stone. He turned the light. In the far corner, beyond the altar, a small wooden door had appeared, though he was certain it hadn't been there before. He approached. The door was no taller than a child, built from mismatched boards and sealed with wax. Symbols had been drawn on it, crosses turned sideways, tears, flames. A crimson thread hung from the handle like a broken rosary. When he touched it, the wax melted instantly under his fingers. The air rushed inward, as if the space behind the door had been holding its breath for 40 years. A voice whispered from the darkness beyond, "Father, do not open what we could not close." He froze. It was Sister Amara's voice, the same trembling tone he had heard in his rectory weeks ago. "Where are you?" he called. "If you're here, show yourself." Silence. Then the faint sound of weeping. Gabriel gripped the crucifix tight and pushed the door open. Inside was a small chamber, its walls covered with mirrors. Old, cracked, clouded glass framed by black wood. Dozens of them. Some hung crooked, others shattered. But in each fragment he saw not his own reflection, but faces, 5 of them, kneeling, praying, weeping. The faces of the missing nuns. They were frozen in expressions of pleading, eyes open, mouths moving in perpetual prayer. Gabriel staggered back. "Dear God!" He raised the crucifix, whispering Latin absolution. But the mirrors began to tremble, their surfaces rippling as if disturbed by unseen water. The reflections turned their eyes toward him, all 5 at once. Then one of them spoke. "Do not break the prayer." The sound came not from the glass, but from inside his head, echoing through bone and memory. "I came to release you," he whispered, "to bring peace." The faces grew solemn. There is no peace where faith becomes hunger. The mirrors shattered. The light from his flashlight burst into 1,000 shards, scattering across the chamber. For an instant, everything was illuminated. The symbols, the walls, the reliquary, the ancient script. And in that brief blaze, he saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the room, half in shadow, wearing the habit of a nun, but with eyes that burned like coal. Sister Amara stepped forward, or what was left of her. Her face was pale, her hands thin, her lips cracked but smiling softly. "Father," she said, "now you understand why we vanished." He tried to speak, but she lifted a finger to her lips. "Shh, listen." He did, and beneath the ruin of silence, he heard it, the chant again. The same haunting melody the sisters had once heard that stormy night in 1974. Only now the words were clear: ad lucem, sub terra, ad lucem, to the light, beneath the earth, to the light. Amara stepped closer. We followed it down. We thought it was God's voice. We thought it was the angel of Saint Isidore, calling us to pray deeper. But the light wanted something else. It wanted us. Her voice broke, her eyes glistening. We gave it what we had, our voices, our faith, our time, until it became part of us, until we were no longer sisters, but echoes. Gabriel's tears blurred his sight. Then why return now? "Because," she whispered, "it's waking again." The ground shuddered, dust cascaded from the ceiling, the air turned hot, then cold. The reliquary on the altar began to vibrate, emitting a low hum that pierced the air like a bell struck from within. Amara's form flickered. "Seal it, Father, before it breathes again." "How?" Her expression softened. "With what it once wanted most." He looked down at the ancient page, still clutched in his hand, the confession written in her own words. The ink shimmered faintly red now, alive. Amara's voice faded to a whisper. "Faith brought it here. Faith must bury it." And with that, her image dissolved into a swirl of light and dust. Gabriel knelt before the altar once more, pressing the page into the reliquary. As it touched the iron, the humming stopped. The glow vanished. The silence that followed was so deep it felt holy, but just as he rose, he heard a sound behind him, a heartbeat, slow, measured, alive. He turned the flashlight toward the stairway and saw a trail of footprints, bare, wet, leading upward. Someone, or something, had just left the crypt. And above, faint but clear, the chapel bell began to ring again. By dawn, the storm had passed. The chapel above lay drowned in fog, its roof sagging beneath years of silence. Father Gabriel climbed from the underground chamber, his clothes heavy with dust and the scent of iron. Every step echoed like a heartbeat that no longer belonged to him. Outside, the horizon glowed faintly pink, the first fragile light of morning. But it was no comfort. The footprints he had seen leading upward were gone, erased by the wind. He fell to his knees in front of the altar. His crucifix hung askew, his voice raw from prayer. "Lord," he whispered, "what have I seen?" The silence answered with a single sound, the rustle of fabric. He turned. Sister Amara stood near the doorway, her figure thin and luminous in the mist. She seemed neither living nor dead, her veil stirring in a wind that touched nothing else. "You sealed it," she said softly. "I tried." She stepped closer. "Then you must finish it." Her hand trembled as she reached into her sleeve and pulled out a rosary, her own, darkened with time, one bead missing. "This was all I carried when I returned," she said, "but it's not mine anymore. It belongs to what we left below." Gabriel hesitated. "What was it, sister? Tell me truly." Her eyes filled with grief. "Something that fed on faith, until faith forgot itself. We called it the light because we feared to name its sin, but even darkness can learn to pray." Her voice faltered. "The church buried us to protect belief, Father. They thought the silence would end it, but silence is never empty. It listens." Gabriel looked toward the shattered window. "Then why did God allow you to come back?" "To confess," she said, "not to you, to him." She knelt, pressing the rosary into his hands. "You must carry it to the altar and burn it. When the smoke rises, don't look away. That's where you'll find what remains of our souls." He nodded slowly, tears on his face. "Will you be free then?" Amara smiled faintly. "We were never prisoners, Father. Only prayers that went on too long." The wind passed through the chapel again, stirring the ashes of old candles. For an instant, all 5 veils appeared upon the altar, laid out as they had been 40 years ago. Then they vanished, leaving behind only the echo of a woman's voice whispering, "Finish it." The chapel was silent again, its air heavy with the stillness that follows revelation. Father Gabriel stood before the altar, Sister Amara's rosary in his hands. The missing bead glimmered faintly, as though remembering a light long gone. He placed it on the stone, beside the cracked reliquary, and struck a match. The small flame wavered, uncertain, like faith under trial. When it touched the rosary, smoke rose at once, thick and silver, curling toward the ceiling like a prayer finally escaping the earth. The scent filled the room, sweet, then bitter, then something beyond both. Gabriel's eyes stung as he whispered the words she had given him. "Lord, receive what was taken from you, and forgive what was done in your name." The smoke gathered above the altar, shaping itself into faint outlines. 5 forms kneeling, heads bowed. He saw them as they once were, young, hopeful, believing. Their faces were peaceful now. Then the light shifted. A single figure remained standing, Amara. Her hands lifted toward him, palms open, the ghost of her rosary gleaming faintly between her fingers. "Thank you," she said. "Let them rest." Her form began to fade, dissolving into the smoke that had become light. Gabriel reached out instinctively, his fingers brushing only air. But in that moment, he felt warmth spread through his hands. The same warmth he had felt as a young man kneeling in this very place before faith had learned to doubt. he sank to his knees. Lord, if I have served your silence, forgive me. If I have served your will, remember me. The smoke drifted upward, out through the broken roof, into the morning sky. For the first time in decades, sunlight entered the chapel unopposed. It fell across the altar, across the floor, and upon Gabriel's face. He looked down. The reliquary was closed again. The parchment and rosary were gone. Only a single mark remained burned into the stone, a perfect circle surrounded by 5 tiny points of ash. He traced it with trembling fingers. 5 prayers, he whispered, and one answered. Outside, the wind calmed. Birds began to sing among the mesquite trees. The sound was fragile, but alive. Gabriel gathered his Bible and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back once more at the empty altar. For an instant, he thought he heard the faint toll of a bell. One single note carried through the wind, soft as mercy. And somewhere, far below the earth, a whisper replied, Amen. The ruins of St. Isidore's Chapel still rest quietly on the plains of Texas. Pilgrims who pass by say that, on certain mornings, the wind carries a hymn they cannot name, 5 voices blending into one. Some call it memory, others call it grace. Father Gabriel was never seen at the chapel again, but his final homily, found among his papers, carried only one line. Light entered where faith had once fled. And maybe that is what this story has always been about. Not the fear of darkness, but the courage to believe when nothing answers back. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this heart-touching story. Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most. Subscribe and turn on the bell to receive more stories that inspire and transform. Leave a like if you believe in the invisible strength of dignity and faith. And above all, thank you for being part of this community that believes in stories with soul. And before you go, watch the story we leave here on the left. I'm sure it will also move you and make you reflect. If this story moved you, comment, "Faith remains." Share it with someone who still believes in miracles. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for more stories like this.